Welcome to the 25th episode of the Justin Spaulding Show. We're 25 episodes in. That's almost half a year. 26. Next week will be a half of a year doing podcasts every single Friday coming to you. And this is June. Well, we're recording this. I'll be transparent. We're recording this on June 10th. You're seeing this on June 11th. When you're watching this, because we're going to still launch it, at noon Central Standard Time on Friday, right? When you're watching this right now as you speak, I'm actually out at our new deal, 6 Points, in West Dallas, Wisconsin. The deal that we're closing at the end of this month, hopefully. Just checking out some progress. There's a little bit of an insurance claim out there, so we're just kind of checking out some of the progress there and making sure there's no bumps in the road. So that's what I'm doing right now while you're watching this. And today we're talking all about growing, starting, growing, and scaling a business. And the reason that I wanted to do that is because someone shared this, and I'd read this before, but someone had shared this Amazon.com 1997 letter to shareholders, and I just, I thought there was some awesome points in it. And it's like, we're nowhere near Amazon, obviously, around here, right? We're little peanuts compared to them, but you can definitely apply what they applied back then and what they actually still apply right now, where, there's a lot of public companies that are only looking to perform over the next 90 days because they got to hit their quarterly whatever for Wall Street, right? And Amazon really made a decision early on, even as a public company, to not do that and to make long-term decisions. So there's parts of this, I highlighted certain parts of this Amazon letter to shareholders, and I'm going to just kind of read. And that's going to kind of set the tone to get us thinking like, oh, wow, holy crap, this is how you grow a substantial business, right? And then what we're going to do is kind of go into what we've done around here, what I've done over the last 10 years, specific things, real examples that I've done around here, starting, growing, and scaling our businesses. And hopefully that you're able to get a lot out of this and go out and start or grow or scale your business, or do all three if you haven't yet started. So that being said, let's jump into this 1997 letter to shareholders. You can find this online probably if you Google it, is my guess, because it's public information, being a public company and stuff like that. So, kind of halfway through. By the way, so in 1997, some of their milestones by year end in 1997, Amazon had served more than 1.5 million customers, and they had an 838% revenue growth. Their revenue was 147 million, and they probably do that in like 1 minute now, but they were 147 million back there in 1997. And then halfway down the first page, it talks about it's all about the long term, right? And when you're starting a business, it should be all about the long term. I've always been about the long term, and that's part of the reason that we've been able to have, what some people consider, some people, point at what we're doing around here, like, God, if I could just do a quarter of what you guys have done in my entire life, if I could do that in my entire life, you guys have done it in 7-8 years, I'd be happy. How'd you do that in 7 or 8 years? Well, it's all about the long term for us, right? We're not making short-term decisions. So back to the Amazon letter, they talk about, we will continue to focus relentlessly on our customers. We will continue to make investment decisions in light of long-term market leadership considerations rather than short-term profitability considerations or short-term Wall Street reactions. We will continue to measure our programs and the effectiveness of our investments analytically to jettison those that do not provide acceptable returns and to step up our investment in those that work best. We will continue to learn from both our successes and failures. Too many people are scared to fail. And here's Amazon saying, hey, we're going to fail. Inevitably, we're going to fail, but we're going to learn when we succeed. We're going to learn when we do fail. Sometimes you're not always going to hit the ball, right? We will make bold rather than timid investment decisions where we see sufficient probability of gaining market leadership advantages. So for them, it was just all about how do they gain market share? How do they become a leader in their market? That's what they were willing to trade dollars to be able to get those leadership advantages that would then set them up for, the early 2000s, mid 2000s, 2010s, and to where they're at today in 2021. Some of these investments will pay off. Some investments will pay off, others will not, and we will have learned another valuable lesson in either case. Okay, so then picking up from there. When forced to choose between optimizing the appearance of our GAAP accounting and maximizing the present value of future cash flows, we will take the cash flow I'm not the only one talking about cash flow. Grant Cardone's not the only one talking about cash flow. Here you got Jeff Bezos and Amazon talking about cash flow. Can you imagine that? Successful business talking about cash flow. We will work hard to spend wisely and maintain our lean culture. We understand the importance of continually reinforcing a cost-conscious culture, particularly in a business incurring net losses. People are like, net losses? They were incurring net losses. They were incurring net losses just like some of our businesses, get net losses because they're investing for the future. They're building their infrastructure. They might have too many employees, more employees than they need right now, or higher paid employees than what they need right now in order to get to the next level versus trying to do it backwards and get the business and then get the people. If you have the people, you're going to get there and you're going to build the business. So that's what we're talking right there. They're staying lean. They're not buying things that they don't need. They probably didn't. They probably had a jet by then, but they weren't being they weren't going overboard with just crazy expenses like some companies do. They wanted to continue to be lean in certain areas because they're having a net loss, right? We will balance our focus on growth with emphasis on long-term profitability and capital management. At this stage, we choose to prioritize growth because we believe that scale is central to achieving the potential of our business model. Maudine, as I'm reading through this, maybe I'll give you this copy so that you can match it up and pop it, take a picture of it or something and pop it up on the screen as I'm reading each part or something like that. So that people that are watching, they can kind of read and see it. And then people that are listening, you'll just have to go check out YouTube if you want to see that version. Otherwise, you can just keep listening to my pretty voice here. We will continue to focus on hiring and retaining versatile and talented employees and continue to weight their compensation to stock options rather than cash. We know our success will be largely affected by our ability to attract and retain a motivated employee base, each of whom must think like and therefore must actually be an owner. And that's a pretty awesome statement. And we're looking at some of those things and those vehicles in our company right now, actually. Then it goes on to success and talk a lot about obsessing over customers and providing a great customer experience, making customers happy, getting repeat customers, so doing whatever it takes to keep that customer happy on the first, second, third, fourth time so that there's always a next time. They're always about the next. They're never about what you did for me right now or what you just did for me yesterday. Hey, how do we get that next transaction? And so they talk a lot in this about obsessing over customers. This is 3 pages long, by the way, and so I'm just reading. There's a couple more highlights that I want to read. So in the section where it's talking about obsessing over customers, by many measures, Amazon.com came a long way in 1997. Sales grew. Listen to this one, Maudine. Sales grew from 15.7 million in 1996 to 147.8 million, an 838% increase in 1997. Cumulative customer accounts grew from 180,000 in 1996 to 1.5 million in 1997, which is a 738% increase. The percentage of orders from repeat customers, this is what we were just talking about, the percentage of orders from repeat customers grew from over 46% in the fourth quarter of 1996 to over 58% in the same period in 1997. Then they go on to talk about infrastructure in the letter. And now we're into the 3rd page. And once again, I'm taking like maybe you're hearing. If you're really curious about this, you should Google 1997 Amazon letter to shareholders and read the whole thing. It's 3 pages long. You're getting about 15%, 20% of it here in my Cliff Notes. Infrastructure. During 1997, we worked hard to expand our business infrastructure to support these greatly increased traffic, sales, and service levels. And they are as follows. Amazon.com's employee base grew from 158 people to 614 people, and we significantly strengthened our management team. So right there's a big investment in people and the management team to then be able to go, bull forward and do what they did in the late 90s after 1997, early 2000s to set them up for 2010, 2013, 2015, 2020. Jeff Bezos was thinking, in 1997, Jeff Bezos was thinking about 2020 when COVID happened. 2021, he's thinking about that. How can we be set up for the future? It's all about the future. It's all about long-term growth, right? Their distribution center capacity grew from 50,000 to 285,000 square feet, including a 70% expansion of our Seattle facilities and the launch of our 2nd distribution center in Delaware in November. Their inventories rose to over 200,000 titles, and they say titles here because, primarily when Amazon started, Maudine, I don't know if you know this or not, they primarily just did books. Yeah, and so they had 200,000 titles at the end of the year, enabling us to improve availability for our customers. And I was reading another thing off of this. They got to the point where they wanted to have a store that was open 24/7, 365 for books, and have the biggest library available. They got to the point where at this current time back then, they had their store to fit all their books, all their titles, would have been 7 football fields big. That's a big bookstore, right? And now you're open 24/7, 365. That was in 1997. That's how they disrupted Barnes and Noble. That's how they disturbed. Well, I think it was like BAM Books or something like that. That's how they just disrupted the entire industry. Our cash and investment balances at year end were $125 million thanks to our initial public offering in May 1997 and our $75 million loan offering us substantial strategic flexibility. Then it goes on to talk about our employees. It's not easy to work here. So basically he starts to talk about when he hires and what he talks to employees about. And he says when he interviews people, he would tell them you can work long, hard, or smart. But at Amazon, you can't choose 2 out of 3. So I'm thinking that you can't have 1 out of 3 then. You can't have 0. You probably got to have all 3. So that's the type of people that he was trying to hire. And, they go from 158 employees to 614 employees. Did they have to grow that much? I'm guessing, 100 of those employees were for future expansion. And they probably didn't need 100 of those or 120 or 80 or, whatever the number is. But they were investing in the future. So, I just wanted to kick off the call with that because this episode talking about starting and growing and then scaling a business, I thought it just really teed it up really good because that's what they did. I mean, Amazon started, they grew, and then they really exponentially scaled into the behemoth they are today. I mean, they're 26 years old today, I think. I think they started in like 94 or something like that, 95. Ish. I don't know. Maybe I should know my facts, but sometimes we just spit stuff out. Madine's going to Google it. But I believe they're like 25 to 27 years old today, and they are, one of the largest companies. 1994, Amazon started. So they're one of the largest companies, obviously, on the planet. And they provide a great customer experience. When I get something from Amazon, I mean, it's like if I'm not happy with it, or if it's not what it's supposed to be, or if it's late or whatever, you call them. And if it's the wrong thing, they'll be like, hey, just keep it. We'll send you the right thing, or whatever. So they're great to deal with and all that, which makes it easy and appealing to obviously order from them. So when you talk about, starting, so it's starting this episode 25, the Justin Spaulding Show, starting, growing, and scaling a business. And when you talk about starting, you got to have a vision, right? You got to have an idea. You got to have a vision of where you want to be. And that's where the long term should start. What do you want this company to be, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40 years from now? Some of the most successful people on the planet, they're planning and thinking generations ahead, let alone just, a few years, right? So you got to have that vision of 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 plus years when you're starting a business. You got to have that idea, and then you got to write down some of those goals, and you need to start. You can't. This goes back to an Instagram post that I had the other day. Madine, maybe you can flash this on the screen for people too, about the one where we're talking about what's the worst thing, what's the best thing, what's most likely to happen. So when you get to a point where you have a great idea and you got this vision, so many people are just like scared to take the jump. It's like, dude, you can always go back. Number one, you can always go back to doing what you're doing today, right? If you have this great idea you want to go after, like you can always go back to being a firefighter, a police officer, a teacher, a content creator. You can always go back to what you were doing. You only, you want to start big. Why not go after the big things when you're younger, right? You have less good risk. You might not have a family, whatever. Go out there and do it, right? You can always go back to what you're doing before. Similar to the conversation we've had about going to school, right, Madine? Like you can always go back to school if you want.
My classmates are 40, 30.
Right. Yeah. So like they're an example of like, and the thing is they probably went to school back then. They've been in debt a couple times now going to school probably. So you got to get started. Then when you're thinking about a company and when it comes to, starting it, growing it, scaling it, every single business out there is made of, it kind of has these silos that have to be able to work together, but there's silos. And obviously every company has sales and marketing, right? So every company, you got sales and marketing no matter what, because you got to be able to sell whatever you got, whatever your service is, whatever your product is. If you don't have sales, you don't need to produce anything. You don't need an accounting department to count it. You don't need HR and admin to oversee the people because you don't have a business, because you don't have any top line revenue that then pays those people. Make sense? So you need to have sales and marketing. And this is a good way right here when you're looking to scale your business. This is what I'm going to kind of talk about that every single company has. This is a great way of how you can pay attention to each of these silos and see where you're struggling the most. And if you're struggling significantly in one of these areas or lacking one of these areas, it might be why you haven't taken the next step yet. So every company, I'm gonna rattle them off really quick and then I'll go more in depth. Every company has sales and marketing. All right, you gotta sell and market the product. Then you got production, right? You gotta produce something, whether it's a product and a widget or a service. You're producing something. You have a product that you've got to produce, right? And so the production is kind of like the operations of the company. So you got sales and marketing, where you're doing your selling, your branding, your marketing, your sales, right? Then you got your production, or it could be operations, or whatever it might be. You're giving that service, building that product, and getting that product out. And then you've got accounting, right? So you got the accounting bucket, and then the next one is you have HR and admin. Right, admin departments. And so those, when I look at any company, some companies you could break it down and boil it out a little bit different way, but in broad terms, these are the silos that every single company needs to scale and to grow. Now, if you don't have accounting, some of you might be like, man, I'm stuck at $200,000 a year revenue. Started my business 2 years ago and got off to a fast start. We're at 200,000, and now we're just stuck at 200,000. Well, why? What area do you need to sell more? Or are you selling too much and then you can't produce it? That's our issue right now in Prime Painters, right, Maudine? You're hearing us talk about that all the time. Like, we've actually paused some of our marketing because right now in our production, that's the part. We have the accounting, we got the sales, we got, our HR department. Well, so really it's our HR and production. HR, we need to hire more people, get more subcontractors on board so we can produce the product, right? But if you're stuck at X dollar amount and haven't been able to break through, which of the silos are you struggling at? If you can't produce, okay, well, now you can sell, great. But now you collect the money, now you got to produce it. If you don't produce it, you're going to have people wanting refunds, right? Okay, now the next thing might be, hey, maybe you are actually making maybe you have more than $200,000 of revenue coming in and you just don't know it. Or now maybe you're like, hey, I have $200,000 of, why do I not have any profits? Well, maybe you need an accounting department, right? Maybe you're spending too much, you're spending absurd, or maybe your prices need to rise. So you need financial reporting, you need the accounting department, so you have the financial reporting, so then you can make the decisions on the sales and then the production that then gets your books right, it then gets your money right. It should get your company in line, so now it should be able to grow top line revenue, should be able to cut expenses, and it should be more profitable. Right? And then obviously you have to have admin and HR, and you have to be able to onboard employees and train employees and retain employees. You got to be able to do reviews and all that stuff, right? If you can't do that, once again, now you don't have the people to go sell, you don't have the people to produce or operate, and you don't have the people in the accounting department, right? So if you are missing one of the silos in business, you will not be able to have a successful business for very long. And that's the problem of why you see so many people that start a business and then stay small, or start a business and it goes away, or starts a business and it goes bankrupt. Because if it goes bankrupt, they didn't maybe have the financials to make those decisions on the front end, the middle end, and the back ends, right? So figure out, if you've already started a company, to scale it, figure out where your bottleneck is, figure out where your weak point is. It's easy enough to just take a piece of paper and put it, landscape wise, right? And write down your company name at the top. You have a sales category. You have your sales, marketing, branding category. You have your production or operations. And production and operations will cover, once again, everything after the sale is done and complete and you've got someone's down payment or the contract is signed. Everything from there to basically like bringing money in is basically operations and or production. So to be able to, if you're actually producing a widget, production and operations would be, ordering the raw materials. If you've got a factory back there, it's making sure that you're, checking out how much waste do you have? Can you get better with waste? Are you wasting too much product? It's how you're handling returns, how you're handling all the things to basically provide the service, get the product, shipping the product to the customer, how they get a receipt, what type of responses they're getting from you saying, hey, thank you for your order. That's part of operations and production. Collecting the money, that's part of operations and production / it's kind of with accounting, right? And that's kind of where that transition is. And then once you've done that, now you've got to account for everything that you've sold. You've got to account for all the costs that you had to go into that sale to make that product, to have the employee on staff to manage that whole operations, right? That's all a part of the accounting, and you need to go back and be able to look at your financials, right? And from the accounting, you make financials, you make income statements, there's accounts receivable reports, there's accounts payable reports, there's cash reports and balance sheets, and what are your liabilities? What are your, so then you go to admin and HR. All right, well, what type of, if you're having a hard time finding the labor, so that's where we're looking at, like, what can we do differently right now in our HR, offering to employees, to subs, like, what can we do to attract and retain and get more talent? What can we do to, get someone in off the streets and who wants an opportunity, who's willing to work hard, who's willing to learn, who's willing to get paid a little bit less right now, but how can we train that person to get to the next level? How can we turn the person that comes in that has in prime painters, for example, how can we take that person who has no painting experience and get them on board at $13, $14, $15 an hour, depending where they're at, and how can we get them on board so that we can then start paying them 20? 19, 18, 21, 22, 23, and get them trained up and get them to the point where they can produce more, higher quality and stuff like that. What type of trainings can we put in place, right? And so I'll stick on the prime painters and use prime painters at all of our 4 buckets as to why we've gotten out to a relatively good start there in prime painters, where people are looking at us in the area like, how are you guys growing this so fast? I feel like I see your trucks everywhere. I feel like I see your name everywhere. I see Facebook posts everywhere. I see you guys doing work all the time. I see you guys posting stuff. How are you guys doing all this? Well, let's look at our 4 silos that I'm just talking about, right? So prime painters, the very first thing that I did, right, was I hired a sales rep. Actually, no, I hired two painters first to produce a couple of projects that we had in our apartments. So we had a production team lined up. Right? That was it at the beginning, 2 painters. Then the next thing I did was hire a sales rep, right? Well, while they're working on those apartment projects, I was like, all right, now we can sell and market and brand, right? We can get Facebook posts out there. We can say, hey, we're a new company. We can, right? Get some business, go out, give them estimates, sell them the job, get them signed up, get their deposit in, tell them we'll be out there in 2 weeks. And so that's what we did. So we finished up the apartment jobs. We hired that sales rep. We sold some jobs. Then when we were done with the apartment jobs, we went out and produced those people's job. And then it went to accounting, right? And I used the infrastructure that I had at Spaulding Group. We kind of already had accounting set up where they did the books for prime painters as well, right? And then we started to develop, HR and admin is the same type of thing. We kind of used Spaulding Group's infrastructure there a little bit and shared it to start. So now if you're going to say, well, you had Spaulding Group. Okay, well then going back to Spaulding Group, how do we get to the accounting and how do we get to the admin portion of it? We just started hiring people, right? So 4 years ago, 4 years and, 4 years and a month, 4 years and 2 months ago, we hired Ava, who started as a bookkeeper. And that was the start of the accounting department that would take on, all of that would account for all of the properties and all the rents that came in and all the expenses that went out and all the checks that were cut. Right, and now that department has grown by a couple people, and then we, got to the point where we had to worry and focus on our HR and admin. And at the beginning, your HR and admin will probably fall on someone else's shoulders that's already in the company, maybe in the accounting department, or maybe it's one of the owners or whatever. But as you grow, you're going to have to hire people to be able to take that department over, because you're going to always have, when you get to 40, 50, 60 employees, you're going to have some turnover. You're going to always be kind of hiring people. If you're like Amazon, where they went from 158 employees to 617 or whatever it was in 1 year, they had to have a heck of an admin and HR department to be able to do that. Because when they grew that number, they also lost. Maybe they lost 15% because they had some turnover, right? So of those initial, maybe they lost 20 employees and they still had to get up to that 617 number. Without an HR or admin department, they would have never been able to do that. And then if they had the HR and admin department, but they didn't have the accounting department, they wouldn't have been able to account for all the work that all those new employees were doing, all the stuff they were selling online and all the stuff that they were shipping out. So you need to focus on those 4 categories and really, and I'm just pounding this over and over again, because if you are struggling to grow a business or you're getting frustrated, it is in one of those areas that you are struggling most. And you might get to the point where you have to hire someone. You might be, I'm really good at, I'm good at sales and branding and marketing. I think I'm good. I don't know. Maybe I'm not that good. Maybe I'm not that good, but that's where I think I'm best at. And so for Spaulding Group, right? I knew that I needed help on the bookkeeping end. We hired Ava. I knew I needed help on the operations end and the production of it. So the actual overseeing of renting apartments and all that stuff on site. So we hired CJ. Right? And now we have Michelle, CJ, Ava, kind of all as a combination overseeing that HR and admin department. And then we hire, Ryder, and Maudine's a part of basically that sales end, because it's sales, branding, marketing. This content that Maudine's making for us is a form of sales. And actually he's picking up the phone now and he's starting to do some sales. Right? So he's kind of learning that game. He's like, hey, I want to be able to make some money doing sales. All right, well, let's do it. Let's get you on the phone and get your skills up a little bit. So, you got to be able to, so then the next part is, after you kind of figure out your silos and you get that straight, you figure out where you're struggling and realize where I need to allocate dollars. You might say, dude, where are these dollars coming from? Because I got to eat too. Well, that goes back to, hopefully you're willing to be able to have a long-term viewpoint on this thing, like Amazon's talking about in the letter. And hopefully you're willing to have a net loss in your business right now that you start, so that you can hire. So instead of having if you're doing a $300,000 a year revenue right now, and you got $60,000 or $30,000 of take home, operate at a net loss this year. Put that 30 to 40 to 50 to 60 into a person that can fill one of those silos and take it over for you. Maybe you're not good at sales. Go find someone that is and allocate that money for 3 months. Allocate that money to that person before you have enough sales to cover it. And all of a sudden, after 3 months, if that person is good and you guys have good systems and processes in place, that person's going to start selling. And now all of a sudden, your revenue is going to go from maybe 200 to 300, 400 to 800. What was Amazon? 700. It was in something like 15.7 million. Maybe it goes from 15.7 million to 147 million. Right? If you suck at the accounting, stop being the accountant, dude. Stop being the bookkeeper. Stop trying to keep your own books. Find someone that can do it for you so that you can focus on what you're really good at. Right? And then be able to have a net loss for a couple years to invest back in your company. The next year, as you keep growing, maybe you have some snags in HR once again. But now maybe your net income is up to 120,000. So dude, take 35,000 of that, 45,000 of that, 50,000 of that, and hire someone that can take over your HR and admin, which gives you more employees so you can sell more, produce more, and take your revenue up 2x, 3x, 4x, 5x, 6x. But it's not going to happen without an investment. Getting fired up over here, Muddy. I'm trying to break this thing down, so I want people to understand what I'm talking about. You got to be able to reinvest, right? You've got to be able to put money back in. You got to be able to put time back in. You can't take it all out and strip the company of the fuel. I mean, would you get in a jet, Maudine, if you knew it only had a quarter tank of gas and you were flying to a place that you knew you needed a full tank of gas? Well, that's what people are doing when they're running their businesses right now. They got more money stashed in equity in their house than they've ever got in their business. That's a problem. Yeah. Your business, the jet fuel for your business is people, and people, you got to be able to pay them, right? So ultimately, the jet fuel to your business is cash and cash flow. If you're stripping the cash out, you're not going to have the cash flow. You're going to have the cash in that it brings in, and then it's just gone. And now your business just stays stagnant because, okay, that's cash flow is the real gas, is the real explosive power behind business and growth. Without it, you're going to be the jet that had a quarter tank of gas when it needed a full tank of gas to get to where it was going. You're going to crash. It's not a good situation to be in. Your business, if you're not putting money back in your business and have the cash flowing, cash flow, right? Sell it. So the money comes in, produce it, trade the dollars for the product, right? Account for that, And when it's accounted for and when it's in the bank account, don't take it out of the bank account your personal. Don't take it out and put it into your house and go get new chairs for your house. Keep it in the company, but don't just keep it in the company's savings. Get it flowing. Put it back into the company. Put it back into the sales silo. Put it back into the operations or production silo. Put it back into the accounting silo. Put it back into the HR and admin silo. Like the training that we're going to start doing for prime painters. Well, one of the guys that's going to do the training, he's going to get paid to train the guys. That's an investment that most painting companies aren't going to make. Come in on a Saturday, guys. We're going to train you. Training's free. You're not going to get paid for the training, but the person doing the training is going to get paid for it. Most people aren't doing that. Most people are taking that, I don't know what we're going to pay them for that, to do that training. I don't know if it's $40 or $50 or $100 or $20,000, whatever. The numbers are relevant. Most people don't have that number going back into the business. Most people have that number coming home with them to get a fancier truck or to, do whatever, right? Which, once again, when you get to a certain point, that's fine and dandy. But if you're also at the same point, or if you're content with where your business is at and you're doing that, that's 100% fine. But if you're doing that and then wondering why your business is stuck and why your business revenue is not growing and why your profits aren't getting better, it's because you're stripping the money, you're siphoning the gas out of the jet. You're not going to have enough gas in the jet to get from Chicago to LA. And when you run out of fuel, your landing gear might come out, but you're probably going to just go straight down. This is what the business is going to do. You got to feed it. What are we at for time, Modine? How long have we been going for?
32 minutes.
32 minutes. Modine, does this make sense to you?
Oh, yeah.
And you're around me, so you get to hear this stuff a lot. But I'm trying to break it because I still get questions from people all the time that relate back to this, and it's like, you got to make better decisions. Your business is a living, breathing organism. You're not going to suffocate your dog, right? You're not going to cover its, shut its mouth and cover its nose, right? Because it needs oxygen. Not putting money back into your business, into the 4 silos, and reinvesting is like doing that to your business. You're choking your business out. Too many people, almost everyone, chokes their own business out. You got to be able to also take on partners and view employees as partners. Like, you need other people. Once again, this is if you're asking, why is and you're having a pity party. Why is my business not growing? Why is the revenue staying the same? Why is the net profit not that? Why can't I get more units? Why can't I do this? Why can't I do that? Because you're probably also the person that might be someone that says, I can do it all by myself. I was sitting last night and this morning, I'm like, God, there's no way I could do what we're doing here all by myself. We got like 45 or 50 people. If I tried to do this by myself 4 years ago, I would be, I don't know, maybe we'd have 15 units maybe 36 units if I was doing it all myself. And you know what? I'd probably want to quit. I would probably want to quit because I suck at the bookkeeping. I suck at some of the parts of the production and the operations. There's certain parts that I just completely suck at that it would just completely drain me and burn me out. So you got to be able to recognize this. It's okay that you can't do everything. You're not meant to do this alone. You need people. Jeff Bezos knew that he needed people even when this company was 3 years old. They went from 150 whatever employees to 617, whatever it is. So he recognized early on, even when they got to the 158, he's like, dude, I can't do this alone. Actually, what probably happened is he's probably sitting in his garage. Sales are coming in, and he's like, God damn, I can't keep up with. I can't tape these boxes fast enough alone. I don't have enough time to fulfill all these orders. He probably tried. He might have tried for a little while. Doing it all by his own. And he's finally like, dude, F this. I am sick of this. And then the first thing that Jeff probably did, if you got to sit down and talk with Jeff, I'm completely guessing, this is my guess, he probably picked, the next person was probably the thing that he was least good at, or the thing that was not the best use of his time. AKA, if he could hire someone for, back in 1996 for $3 an hour to, put tape on a box and make a store run to ship the box, he probably hired that first. Or if he was not as good at sales, he probably hired someone to take care of, hey, how we can get our sales up? Or if he was not good at the operations part, hey, how can I get someone in charge here? I'll focus on the sales. I can get that. How can we do it so we can get up to 200,000 titles? That's a production. He talked about that in here, right? They had 200,000 titles of books options for customers. It was someone's task, someone's job to go out and find partnerships, find people, find authors, find whatever to get those 200,000 titles in their inventory, in their catalog. It could have been Jeff, or he could have realized maybe he started that part. Maybe he's like, God dang, I suck at this. Let me go find so-and-so. I'm going to pay them, trade dollars for their hours so they can help me with this vision. Start with the vision that I talked about at the very beginning. Start with the vision so I can go after this vision that I have. You can't do it alone.
Most people don't have a long-term mindset.
Yeah, I would agree. So Madine said most people don't have a long-term mindset. I would agree because most people are like, man, I need that $10 an hour that I'm paying that person right now. I can't, that's $400 a week. I need that $400 a week. Okay, well, then your business is going to suffer. And, how long, like if you gave up that $400 a week, even for 6 weeks, it's going to improve. You hire the right person, have the right processes and systems. It will grow your business. So now that there's more margin, you get that $400 back times 3 or 4 or 5. And now you can invest $1,600 a month back into the business, right? So then the next part is I talked a lot about process. If you have the right people in the right spots, but then you also have to have the right processes and systems in place. Now you don't want everyone to necessarily be robots unless you're like Amazon warehouse where there's actual robots in the freaking warehouse now. But we've talked about this a little bit too on the podcast. All of those areas, right? We've done a really good job with this in Prime Painters. Need to do a little bit better. We're getting better with Spaulding Group. Going back through, and it's actually a project we're working on right now. Every single week, our leadership team sits down for an hour and we go through our processes and systems because we're revamping everything right now. And for our processes and systems, I sit there and I'm like, okay, marketing, sales, branding. What should be all the steps that we do? And again, like off of it, so I look at it and I call it the playbook. I think that's my football background. Our playbook has a sales, marketing, branding section. And then you have all the steps that we want to take. Now, in there's not too much detail. It's just basically check off the box, check off the box, check off the box. So if you plug someone in, they knew what they would have to do. Off of this, we will create trainings for when we onboard new people and then continual training, right? So that people know the playing field. They know where they can and cannot play within the company, basically. And then they know how to play the game, our game, right? So process and systems in the sales department. And you go all the way down, you make a checklist of where we're advertising, what type of pieces of content, all the processes, everything that we need to make a sale. How we're picking up the phone, how quick we want to be able to, and we're also including now on the Spaulding Group side and stuff, like how fast we want to be able to get back to applicants, how fast we want to be able to get back to our guest cards and people inquiring about apartment, and in what ways we're going to get back to them. Email, text, phone, how many times we're going to contact them and reach out within the first day, week, month, right? So you have to have all that stuff laid out. So when someone new comes into you're talking about, Amazon had this. Because they had 117 employees, they went to 658. If they didn't have standards and processes, systems and processes in place, they would have never been able to onboard that many people. The only way they could onboard that many people and have the revenue grow is because they had they had the systems and processes down and documented, and then they would train people up on them, not just one time, but all the time. Daily, monthly, weekly, and then eventually you get so many people on board going in the right direction that now all of a sudden, these other people are saying, hey, wait, that's not how we do it here at Amazon. This is how we do it. And they're showing other people the culture, and they're showing other people how to do it. So you got to be able to, once you can get everything that I said for the first 35 minutes of this podcast down, you've now got to be able to regurgitate it, spit it out, and get it down on paper so that you can be able to get other people on board and train them efficiently and effectively. Without the training and, all the time in our company, there's in the past 2 years, we've had a lot of people like, well, they're not doing what they should be doing. And I'm like, well, this is our fault because we clearly have not been clear enough or defined enough. We haven't defined well enough our way of doing things. And then if we've trained on it once, well, we better train on it all the freaking time. right? So I'm looking at, if you're having employee issues, oh, this person so and so just doesn't, dude, you have to look within yourself. Well, what tools am I giving them to succeed? Did they come in? Because we're not great. We're not great at all these. Like, you're able to, this is the thing too, is you don't have to be perfect in all these areas that I'm talking about. You just got to start doing it, and all of a sudden you're going to start to grow. But then the better you can get with it, the more the better that you can get with all this, though, the faster your business will grow, the stronger it will become, because of the areas of the company, the silos that we talked about, have processes and systems that then the people can come in and fill, right? And they don't just fill those because the processes and systems, what that's going to give you as well, it's going to give you basically what seats. Because now off of that process and systems, you're going to have to be able to assign and make seats on the bus, on the plane, whatever, for people. Seats within your company for people. You need to be able to fill those seats with the people, give them the processes and procedures and systems, and teach them on it continually so they know what they should be doing when they're in that seat within your company, so that then you don't have to be there like, why is this person not doing such and such? Prime painters, we've done a fairly good job at that, I think, because we starting from zero, it was easiest to start and implement the processes and stuff like that. Spaulding Group, it's been a little bit harder because we had already had 700 units, 600 units before we started even really looking at this in depth and in detail. So now we're trying to go back, and a lot's changing, and that's hard for people. But we're trying to adjust, we're trying to get better so that going forward as we go towards 2,000 units, now we can onboard 16 more, 20 more, 40 more people and have less hiccups because we have the Spaulding Group playbook. So I hope all that makes sense. Wadeen, do you have any questions or thoughts or anything? Or you chime in if you want.
Pretty simple.
I'm trying to break it down. I'm trying to, go check out. I know Madine's gonna share parts of this too when I was talking about at the beginning and all that stuff. But go check out the 1997 letter to shareholders by Jeff Bezos, Amazon, from 25 years ago now. And I just read it. I'm like, man, so much of it resonates with me because it's like what we're doing here. And again, it's hard. Like, it's so hard to do what Amazon did. Obviously, it's so hard to do even what we're doing. And we are a little peanut on a peanut on a peanut of a peanut compared to Amazon, right? But it's hard. But if you have these questions, if you have these struggles, if you're wondering why your company's not doing this or your people are doing that, like, go back and watch. If you're listening, go watch this podcast. If you're listening to this or watching this podcast or listening to this, go back and listen to it again until it gets into your head. If you have questions, leave them in the comment section. If you're seeing a clip from this on Instagram, I hope you leave a question in the comment section, and then we can address it right there. And we can also probably make another podcast off of this going deeper in certain areas, right? And maybe that's what we can do is actually create more podcasts going into just straight up the sales freaking silo and what it exactly should look like and consist of and whatever. I mean, I could talk about this stuff all day, especially because the reason I could talk about this all day right now is because it's stuff that we're going through in our companies every single day right now. Because of how many people we're trying to hire right now, because of the amount of units that we're going to break up, to the amount of growth that we're wanting to have in prime painters. Every single day we're talking about production here. How can we produce more prime painters? Because right now it's not a sales issue. We can sell I think we could sell $5 million worth of jobs. We can't produce $5 million worth of jobs yet. We don't have that structure set up to do that yet. We don't have that structure set up to do it today. But doing everything, but by us taking action and doing the things I'm talking about here, which is why it's on my mind, which is why I made the podcast, we're going to get there, right? We don't have the infrastructure to have 6,000 units yet, but we're setting up our infrastructure while we're at 900 units to be ready for 6,000, to be ready for 10,000, to be ready for 12,000, to be ready for 2,000. So thank you guys so much for joining us on the Justin Spaulding Show, episode 25. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week for the 26th episode.